Welcome to Torchlight's Exceptional Parenting Podcast, where we talk with the nation's top experts about today's toughest parenting challenges. Whether you're concerned about your child's development, learning, behavior, or you just want to make family time more enjoyable, we share the practical solutions and tools that can help.
Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Torchlight's Exceptional Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Stefanie Boucher, and today I am feeling very lucky to be here with professional life coach and public speaker, Winston Clements. Welcome, Winston. I am so excited to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much for inviting me on, Stefanie.
Well, for those of you listening, Winston is just a remarkably inspirational speaker who talks to his audiences about resilience and overcoming limitations. In April of this year, which is 2018, he gave a TEDx talk that was just really moving. It certainly changed my perspective on some things in my life, and I've been incredibly eager to get you on the show, Winston, to have you share these messages with our audience as well. Before we get started, I just wanted to offer a quick reminder to our listeners that if you are not currently a Torchlight user as offered by your employer's benefits plan, but you would like to be, you can ask your employer to contact us. They can find our information on our website at torchlight.care. Winston, I'd love to start today by asking you to give us just a bit more information about yourself. You, as I mentioned earlier, speak about resilience and overcoming limitations. And to set the stage to this topic, this is kind of close to your heart because you've been mastering the skill of your resilience your entire life. You were born with brittle bones disease, which for anyone who doesn't yet know what that is a condition that makes one's bones very fragile and causes them to break quite easily. Can you tell us a little bit about your experiences growing up and how they led to you wanting to change the way people perceive their life challenges?
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned, I was born with brittle bones disease, and one side of it is that my bones break easily. And then you have the other side, which is the developmental impact. So my bones don't develop as quickly as they should. So for a adult, I am still quite fairly small in stature. So if you see my images or for people who met me face to face, you probably gauge that I have a body size of maybe a 5 or a 6-year-old. So I tend to look completely different to most people in many different rooms that I enter. And I think the reason why I wanted to use my challenges and my story to inspire others is, I had these experiences, for example, when I was younger and, struggling to fit into school and wondering if I'll be able to make any friends because, as you know, Stefanie, kids can be quite cruel sometimes, or especially when they don't really understand why this kid looks completely different to all the other kids. And so I had those initial struggles of fitting in. And I remember speaking to my parents and saying, I don't want to go back to school anymore because I don't feel like I'm being accepted.
Right.
And I feel that even for me to be able to share a simple story like that with, a kid with a disability or who is struggling to fit into a school environment for any other reason, I think that would have been something that I would have loved to have back when I was younger.
Absolutely. And I don't feel that we've had a lot of those discussions publicly up until quite recently, like maybe the last, decade or two at most, but it's sort of been a slow building movement. And kids now are certainly really at an advantage to have access to more of these types of stories than they used to be. So that's definitely true. Your message arose obviously from your experiences living with a disability, but the wisdom in it is so completely universal. At some time or another, just about everybody has challenges that can seem really insurmountable, at least at the time. And these challenges may be physical or developmental challenges or health challenges, social challenges, financial challenges, relationship challenges. But what do you have to say about any of these sorts of limitations that people face in their lives? Are they truly barriers for us, or do we simply perceive them that way?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think, to use my own experience, I had several moments when, I became really frustrated because of my physical issues and because of struggling to fit in, later on struggling to get a job in the corporate world, which is what I wanted to do. And I had these moments where I thought, these barriers that I'm facing, they're too big, they're insurmountable, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to overcome. Because anyway, for somebody with a disability, and the way our society is, Stephanie, is that there's not much expectation of people who have big limitations placed on them, such as a disability. Right. And in some ways, I think I had started to believe into that negative way of thinking because, I was struggling to fit in. So that was proving to me that perhaps the world is correct. Perhaps people like me are not meant to succeed. And luckily for me, one of the things that really helped me was that I had an amazing support network and people who just refused to give up on me, from the first day. And, big credit to my parents because they always made me believe that I was equal to any other kid, and later on to, anybody at work or, anybody in this world. And I was just as capable. And they sort of pulled me away from subscribing into some of these negative stereotypes that people can have about somebody who has my background. And I think that's a great tip for anybody listening because, life is never plain sailing and we can't always control what happens to us or, what limitations are placed upon us, but we can always control our response. And for some people, it might mean that you need to borrow the strength to get through. In my case, I borrowed the strength from my parents and their belief in me to keep me moving forward. And, that could be a great way for somebody listening to just push through and continue to build up that resilience.
Yeah, I love the way you put that, borrow the strength from someone else. I've never heard that before. That's really cool.
Thank you.
So, you talk about the world placing a set of lower expectations on you, which is really kind of crushing to hear. I think, unfortunately, that happens to kids a lot. Parental support and familial support was obviously very important to you. How else might a child start looking at their limitations as experiences that they can learn from and grow from? And how can they sort of get from point A to point B? What happens in the home is clearly a key part of it. Are there other things they might be able to do when they step out into the world and deal with other people?
Yeah, so I think for me, it started obviously with the familial support and within the household, but then that sort of enabled me to build up a little bit of confidence so that even though when I went to school, initially there were struggles, fitting in, making friends, and that kind of thing, but because I'd always been encouraged to put myself out there, out of my comfort zone, after my initial struggles, I started focusing on the things that I was good at. So, I can make people laugh. I am fairly intelligent in certain subjects and I started to play to my strength. And what I realized was that kids started to become drawn to me because I became like almost the class clown, the guy who could make anybody laugh. Or, for example, kids who needed help with their maths homework, they would come and talk to me because I became known to be good at that subject. And so, I guess a first step would be within the home because that's where we spend most of our time to build up that foundation. Yeah. And then secondary to that is just to continue putting yourself out there. And then I ended up making a ton of friends, people who I still talk to and associate with up to this day. And even with my friends, they have really crazy high expectations of me. So it's just continuing to put yourself in those environments where you're constantly being challenged.
Yeah, and then you had to live up to those expectations.
Exactly. It's almost like manufacturing the pressure because now you have to raise your game to meet those standards.
Right. This makes me think of something I remember you saying in your TED Talk, which is that, the first time you went to school, it was kind of eye-opening for you because it was the first time you really felt your disability because you didn't feel like that at home. But when you got to school, teachers were protective of you and maybe in ways that your family hadn't been. And obviously, children may have looked at you or treated you differently. And it was the first time you really felt that different from anyone else. But then you said your parents presented you with a challenge, right? What was that challenge that they presented you with?
Yeah, so the challenge was to just let my light shine in this new environment, which was school. So I guess what they were trying to say in not so many words is to stop focusing on my limitations and the things which we already know, that I have a physical handicap, and, you know, I look different to the other kids, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. But if I'm to focus on the things that I'm good at, the things which my parents and my family know I'm good at, such as, you know, having the sense of humor and being intelligent and being able to make friends with all types of people and connect with them, then that would put me in a far better position to integrate and to be successful in this world. And all of a sudden, my limitation goes from being an obstacle to almost being an opportunity, because I'm the kind of guy who, even going back to my school days, you know, the other kids would approach me. They wouldn't really be sure what to say to me, or they might be a bit wary, but nonetheless they'd be curious because I looked so different to everybody else. And so if I could use that curiosity and the interest that they had in me to then show them my amazing abilities, then that would be a brilliant way of turning my lemons into lemonade.
That's such an amazing perspective. I absolutely love that. And I don't think we can stress enough the importance for any parent on focusing on your child's strengths. You know, we all, you know, children inevitably have challenges in certain areas. And unfortunately, I think, you know, even just our modern education system tends to emphasize what an individual child can't do, as opposed to what they can do. Like, we're always trying to get people to improve in the areas where they feel deficient, when I think maybe it should be the opposite approach. I think we should be placing more emphasis and allowing them to have more time and spend more energy on where they really thrive and what they, you know, really excel at. So it's much more confidence building and realistic, right? Because you're far more likely to go out into the world and find success developing and capitalizing on your strengths rather than always trying to catch up in areas where you don't excel. So yeah, that's great advice. Many of the families that we serve obviously are raising children who need extra support in some way. What else might parents or caregivers do to help children reframe the way they think about their really tough challenges? I know you've obviously emphasized focusing on strengths. Are there other things that parents can do with their children, other discussions they can have with their children? How can we make sure that they are getting the right messages from us?
Yeah, I think first of all, from my perspective, just thinking of what would have been really amazing to have. First of all, it's just to have a parent who is just ready to listen, because I think a lot of the time, and, you know, I use my own example here again, was some of the things that I saw as insurmountable obstacles, they actually appeared bigger in my mind. But when I was actually allowed to verbalize them and to say, you know, this is how I feel, and share that with my parents, almost immediately after I said, you know, something like, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to make any friends in school. The minute I finished saying that sentence, it almost sounded ridiculous, because, because, you know, it's just one of those things. When you're given an opportunity to express your feelings, it then makes you really think and see, actually, is that a realistic, you know, barrier that I have, or was it something that was being magnified in my mind? So, you know, I think first of all, listen to your kids and allow them to express, because a lot of the time they can actually solve their own problems just by talking it out.
Just by verbal. Isn't that true? That is so incredibly true. It's just for all of us, even. I love when you say that, you know, when you hear it come out of your mouth, you immediately see how erroneous it is. I think we could all take that advice, because it's so true. We build things up in our mind. We magnify them. We go through this sort of like downward spiral in our thinking. It's like a train that's gone off the rails and we can't stop it, right? Until we verbalize it. And then suddenly you're like, wait a minute, did I really just say that?
It's so true.
That's
and I think great. because of our brains, I believe that it's a system that's designed to protect us. And so, you know, whenever you're faced with a challenge, it's almost, I think they call it the spotlight effect, when your brain takes a problem and makes it 10 times bigger in your mind. But that's almost like a a protection device of
It's
the
a
brain.
survival mechanism,
Yeah,
I
it's
think.
a survival mechanism.
Because if there were like a lion coming at you on the, you would want to like make sure you were magnifying the danger of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. I guess one more thing that I would share would be just to let them know that you're always going to be there, and obviously that you love them. Because I know one of the things that I faced was I had in some moments a belief that maybe I don't want to be too open with my parents about my struggles because I feel like I'm already a burden to them with my disability. And then now on top of that, I want to share all of these other emotional problems that I'm facing. It just made me think like, wow, am I putting too much pressure on my parents? Because I think kids are quite conscientious as well, Stefanie. And
yes, they
can
are.
they can see when their parents are maybe feeling the strain, or they can sort of try to do things to protect their parents, even when it might not be in the interest of the child in doing so. So I guess just reinforcing that message of, we're here, we're your parents. We're not going anywhere, whether you're having a good day or a bad day, we've got your back. I think that would be another amazing thing for parents of any children to make available.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Kids are certainly very sensitive and they're very perceptive. And I think a lot of kids try to protect their parents and their families from their difficulties more than we realize some of the time, I think. So thank you for bringing that up. So I think that, a lot of parents may find this actually really heartbreaking, imagining that their child is possibly withholding feelings and thoughts that are important in order to protect them. If not, maybe a little bit heartwarming at the same time because it shows so much empathy and sensitivity. But should parents seek to know everything that their child is thinking and feeling, or should they honor this wish to be protected? Do they need to know all of the heartaches that their child is going through all of the time? And what should parents do when they aren't sure their kids are giving them the whole story?
Yeah, I think it's quite a tricky question because it's probably unrealistic for a parent or anybody to expect to know everything about another person, whether it's their child or somebody else. And I can sort of sympathize and empathize with parents because, you don't want to imagine even for 1 second that your child is going through something, horrible and you had no idea about it. Because as a parent, I guess your first instinct is to, provide and protect and to be there for your child. And I think, in my opinion, what worked for me was actually just having parents who constantly told me that they were going to be there for me and they were going to love me no matter what. And I think just by having that regular reinforcement, it actually encouraged me to open up more about things. Because I no longer felt like, if I tell them about this situation, they might feel, how is it going to affect them? Are they going to see it as a burden? Is it going to put them under pressure? But because I had this continual reinforcement, it just made me think, you know what, I feel like we're in this together. I feel like we're on the same team, and it's not the children's team versus the parents' team. We're actually just playing the same game together. So, yeah, so I think this is what worked for me, and I think this is probably a more realistic approach than trying to maybe interrogate your child or push them to tell you things which might actually end up causing the divide to become even bigger.
That's right. So a lot of it then has to do with the parents' or caregiver's response to the dialogue. That makes perfect sense. Well, thank you so much, Winston, for being with us today. It's been really enlightening to hear your perspective, and I really hope that we can have you back on the show in the future because I think there's so much more to talk about here.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed my time here, Stefanie, and definitely I'd love to come back and share with you guys once again.
Absolutely. We'll be excited to have you back. If you'd like more information about the topics covered here today, be sure you log into the platform and check out the resources tab on your navigation bar. You can check out the e-guides called Help Your Child Self-Advocate and Identifying Your Child's Strengths. And there are loads of other helpful e-guides related to this topic as well. If you'd like to find out more information about Winston or his speaking engagements, you can visit his website at winstonclements.com. That's WINSTONCLEMENTS. That's it for today. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Torchlight's Exceptional Parenting Podcast. Find this and other episodes on iTunes, Spreaker, and Podcast Go. If you're interested in bringing Torchlight Child or any of Torchlight's other caregiving products to your workplace, please contact info@torchlight.care. That's info@torchlight.care.